You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. Today, Joplin police released new information in the shooting death of a 17-year-old girl.
Gorgeous looking beginning to our Wednesday, and wait until you hear about our temperatures for the next 2 days before a cold front finally arrives. We'll have the latest from the Skywatch Weather Center.
Also, 3 families who survived the deadly Mayfield, Kentucky tornado received donated gifts to help them down the road to recovery. All that and more coming up.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Thanks for joining us for the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. I'm Tanya Bach. More details emerge in the shooting death of a teenage girl. Todd Mays is in custody, charged with the first-degree murder of his 17-year-old daughter. Jasper County coroner says the victim's name is Prayer Nicholson. However, friends and family knew her as Prayer Waddell. Shooting happened at a home on South Connor in Joplin. A police report indicates the suspect and victim got into a verbal argument on the upper floor, that the girl threw a glass bottle at Mays. They say Mays went downstairs, got a handgun, confronted his daughter on the staircase, and shot her once in the abdomen. She died at the hospital. Police in Parsons, Kansas say yet another dog has been killed. The 3rd dog reported killed in the city in less than a year. Officers say this dog named Draco was found December 29th, wrapped in a blanket by a small bridge near Felix and 7th Streets. A veterinarian who examined Draco says there was severe trauma to the dog's abdomen and around the neck from a choke chain that was on it, indicating that a human did it. This is the 3rd dog in Parsons to be killed and the 4th to be attacked. Police say a dog named Blue was shot and killed, and then another named Zeus was shot but survived. Then on December 3rd, the dog of a Parsons police officer, Ranger, was found brutally killed. $34,000 reward is being offered in that case. However, authorities say no leads have come of it, which makes them think it is the work of a lone suspect. Parsons police are encouraging all dog owners in the city to keep an eye on their pets while they are outside. As COVID cases continue to rise in our area, some school districts have decided to temporarily return to virtual learning. Miami Public Schools will be virtual for the rest of the week, as will Grove and Carthage. The Neosho, Missouri School District is canceling classes through the week because of a high rate of cases among staff. Other school districts say they're monitoring their situations. At a council meeting Tuesday night, the city of Carthage recognized some local heroes who helped save the life of a Jasper County deputy. Chris Corbett suffered a heart attack in November. And last night, some co-workers at the Jasper County Sheriff's Office, emergency dispatchers, Carthage Fire Department, and Mercy McCune Brooks EMTs were honored for recognizing and responding to Corbett's symptoms.
You know, like money doesn't pay to save a life, you know. You just need to turn around and do good deeds and, try to pay it back somehow. Whether it's a little token of appreciation, like sending pizza to the firehouse or something like that. We just need to do something.
City also honored members of the Carthage Police Department for their help. A Joplin organization gets some much needed money for its mission of helping families in crisis. Chick-fil-A announced Watered Gardens Washington Family Hope Center will receive $125,000 as a recipient of a True Inspiration Award grant.
So we were excited to have a space available finally for moms to stay with their kids during those times of crisis. However, by the end of that first month, those 6 family units were full. And it's been mostly full except for a day or two here or there ever since.
Washington Family Hope Center says it will use the funds to provide food, shelter, clothing, job counseling, and more. Well, if you like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, or ginger ale, you can thank a pharmacist. That's right, pharmacists invented them, and today just might be the perfect day to toast one of those bubbly beverages to your fave pharmacist for National Pharmacist Day. Clearly, there's much more that they do these days. When it comes to your health, they are vital. They give you your meds along with advice on what you're taking, and they immunize people. A lot of pharmacists also do research, discovering and testing new medications.
Shout out to the pharmacists.
Mm-hmm. And the soda makers, inventors.
Live look outside of Television City. Gorgeous beginning to our Wednesday. Official sunrise over Joplin will take place at 7:31 this morning, and we'll get plenty of sunshine early. Still a wide variety of temperatures. We have been all over the board. Out to the west, you see as low as 24 in Neodesha. We've now seen Independence and Sedan slip below the 30 mark as well. But you've got an 18-degree difference there when you move into Joplin. That's at 42. And Carthage right behind at 41. Let's roll 39 in Miami. So it's just been one of those mornings where, you know, anytime you get an 18 to 20 degree difference as far as what we're seeing geographically, that is a huge swing. Wind moving in from the south-southwest, but the hardest of the winds kind of dipping off to our east. So it's not going to be as blustery as what it was yesterday. Still do have a little bit of a wind chill in effect there yet, as we've don't have anybody that's been able to feel like 30 degrees. So the wind is playing a little bit of a factor. Still have a whole bunch of the high pressure through the Midwest and the jet stream really flattening out. We used to have that pronounced U shape. It was over the Pacific Northwest. About right there is where it was. Now we're seeing more of a flat pattern as it moves from west to east right here, taking the majority of the cold air and dispatching it to the northeastern portion of the United States. Waterlogged Pacific Northwest up there in Washington State. No reprieve for them. Seeing a little cloud cover, kind of come and go today, but we'll stay on the dry side. As a matter of fact, humidity going to be very, very low this afternoon once again. We're down to around 25%. At the noon hour yesterday. Still, our temperatures, cannot complain about this for the middle of January. Let's roll mid-50s, and then as the clouds build for the afternoon, they then disappear overnight. Should be able to stay just above the freezing mark for Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Future track. As we put that in motion, everything really stays off to our northeast for the next 2 days. Above normal temperatures for Wednesday and Thursday. Friday, much closer to normal, but Friday, also going to bring us a little bit of an interesting mix from the north. Friday night, we've got some rain that will develop with a Canadian air mass that could flip over into some snow for Saturday. Coming up here in just a little bit, Tanya, we'll follow this thing as it moves due north through us. A lot of snow for the upper plains. Kansas City is going to end up with some snow, and we'll check out how much we're going to get as well. Shouldn't be able to stick though. Ground, you know, coming off of what we've had past couple of days and what we're going to see here in the future couple of days. Ground's going to be nice and warm.
I'm looking at those low temperatures on Friday and loving that 42 though.
Can't beat that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, thanks, Michael. Well, want to know what to do with your old Christmas tree? We're talking about your live one here. K-State Extension Service is in the house this morning with some advice. But first, at home, rapid COVID-19 tests are a quick and easy way to test yourself if you know what you're doing. Stay with us and we'll show you what you need to know. You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14.
When searching for your
According to new data, more people are in U.S. hospitals with COVID-19 than ever before. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services released the data showing patients with the virus have reached a new record high. Nearly 146,000 patients are currently being treated in hospitals for COVID-19. That's twice as many from 2 weeks ago, and that surpasses the previous high set in January of 2021. 24,000 patients are being treated in intensive care units. The number of children in hospitals with COVID also reached a new high. Nearly 5,000 pediatric patients either have confirmed COVID or are suspected of having the virus. Experts say not every patient was originally hospitalized because of COVID. Some were admitted for another illness but tested positive while in the hospital. Now, according to the CDC, 98% of new COVID cases are the Omicron variant. Closer to home, a surge of COVID patients and staff shortages are straining some hospitals in Oklahoma, and that includes OSU Medical Center in Tulsa, which is now at full capacity. Administrators say they currently have 30 COVID patients, which is leading to issues in the emergency room. One doctor says some people are waiting for a room for hours. Center's chief of staff says more hospital workers have left their job and it's low on testing supplies. He says people can support healthcare workers by getting vaccinated and boosted. Staff at another area hospital, St. Francis, say they're putting patients in hallways due to capacity issues. The latest CDC guidance includes an element of COVID-19 testing. Doing a test at home may be more convenient than going to a clinic or lab. However, you may not know how it's done properly. Mandy Gaither shows you how.
This is not a virus to fool around with. This is like no other respiratory virus.
And this variant is like no other.
Omicron will ultimately find just about everybody.
Most people are going to get COVID.
We've seen a nationwide average of more than 754,000 new cases of COVID-19 a day over the past week. Nearly 146,000 people were hospitalized with the virus as of Tuesday. And more than 1,600 people on average have died from it each day in the past week. Many hospitals are juggling staffing issues. States are doing everything from postponing elective surgeries to calling in the National Guard and declaring public health emergencies. And now more children are being hospitalized with COVID-19 than ever before. But the CDC says only about 1 in 6 kids aged 5 to 11 is fully vaccinated. As schools continue to assess and debate in-person learning, it's back to the classroom in several of the nation's largest school districts. Others have had to go remote amid massive teacher absences. All of this means all eyes are on the White House to turn the tide. Listen to what happened during a hearing on the federal response to Omicron.
Do you think anybody has had more influence over our response to this?
You personally attack me.
I assume that that's
Senator,
not the case.
What are you talking about? You are totally incorrect. What a moron.
What happens next will mark a pivotal moment for the Biden administration. I'm Britt Conway reporting.
A 9-foot statue of Harriet Tubman is unveiled in Philadelphia. It's actually a traveling monument that honors the woman who helped hundreds of slaves escape through the Underground Railroad network of safe houses in the 19th century. The sculpture is called Journey to Freedom, and it will stay in front of the City Hall through the end of March. It's there to help celebrate Black History Month in February, Women's History Month in March, and Tubman's 200th birthday. That's cool.
Pretty neat right there.
Very cool.
Now we'll have a...
I'm not sure where it's...
Right.
So
I think you and I are on the same page. I'm like, where's it going after that?
Yeah, I know. Like, wonder how close it'll get to us. We might have to look into that.
Okay. Yeah, it threw me for a loop there when it dawned. I could see the light bulb. Both of us went, wait a second.
Where's it going next?
Why is it temporary?
It's going to be there for a while.
Still pretty neat, though.
Yeah.
All right, live look over television. There's an outside of 7th and Rangeline, excuse me. My goodness, the traffic picked up, and it picked up fast on this Wednesday morning. Current conditions as we sit at a very comfortable 42 degrees, comfortable at least in Joplin, but then out to the west, still looking at mid to high 20s in Neodesha, Independence, and Sedan. Monette and Cassville sit at 35 and 37. Miami at 39 and Pittsburgh at 35. The highest of the winds have moved off to the east, so we're pretty much done with those 25-mile-per-hour gusts that we picked up earlier. One thing we're not done with, humidity is going to continue to drop and drop as low as about 25-30% for this afternoon. At the same point in time, we're still looking at a double-digit increase, at least in Joplin, compared to where we were at this point in time on Tuesday. A little light cloud cover hanging down to the south and central portions, staying on the dry side, though. As a matter of fact, check out the entire Midwest. Hardly any precipitation to speak of. Cooler temperatures hanging out to the west. We're starting to almost see this system right here almost cut itself off. You see that, notice that it's almost making a complete circle right there. And that'll develop a low pressure system. It'll put some rain up in the Pacific Northwest, but you've got this sliver right here, that diagonal sliver, which is going to result in nothing but dry conditions for the next 2 days. As far as our afternoon planner goes, temperatures, around 56, 57 degrees, able to pull that off even with increased cloud cover. And then as we work overnight, clouds will kind of jut off to the east, and we'll be back down just above the freezing point. Future track for today and tomorrow, well, that's the clouds ebbing and flowing, kind of sprinting right through. But then as we get ready for Friday, this is going to be the big change. Watch the top of your screen here. See that thing develop? This thing's going to drop about 6 to 12 inches of snow for the upper plains as it moves through. Now, watch when it gets right over Kansas City. Kansas City is still going to end up with snow, but it wants to flip on over to rain as that approaches us Friday night into Saturday morning. We are going to see some snow for our northern counties. A positive side of it is the fact that we're riding conditions for, we have for the past 2 days, and we will for the next 2 days, that are 10 to 12 degrees above normal. Our ground should be warm enough that, any accumulation and anything that we see on roads shouldn't pose that much of a threat throughout Saturday morning. We'll be back with a Wildcat Wednesday with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this.
Welcome back. It's time for another Wildcat Wednesday, and I've got Jesse Gilmore in studio here from the K-State Extension Service. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. It's good to be here.
Well, if you're like me, you haven't taken down your Christmas decorations yet, and it's time. If you've got a live tree, it's really time to get that out.
Yep. So obviously with the holiday season, people can have live trees or fake trees. If you have a live tree, it's going to probably be starting to die right about now. And a lot of people are left with questions about what to do with the tree. And you do have a couple of options, some that are more horticultural than others. Obviously, some cities will have pickup for live Christmas trees after the holiday season is over. I would imagine that if your city has done that by now, that's not really an option anymore. But you do have some things that you can do in the landscape with your tree. The first thing that you can do is put it out as cover for birds. So if you have a bird feeder, you can put it nearby the bird feeder, either on the ground or tied to another tree to serve as extra cover. It should still have a lot of its needles left and would be a good option for birds to fly back to if for some reason a predator was nearby.
Yeah, because a lot of trees right now don't have any leaves.
Yep.
So.
Most trees are going to be deciduous and not really provide the best amount of cover. So you would tie it to a nearby tree, or you would put it near some kind of structure like a deck and put seed out on that. Your other option is to use it as pond cover for fish. So sinking the tree into a pond will serve as a substrate for water plants, aquatic plants to grow, and basically serve as cover for minnows and other fish to live and grow in. So it's a good option for people with ponds that might want to stock them with amounts of fish. To sink it, you would basically just tie a cinder block to the edge of the tree and throw it in, and that should sink it. Your last option to use the tree that has served as this holiday decoration is to use it as firewood. It is important to realize, though, that because pines, spruces, and firs, pine, spruces, and firs that are used as Christmas trees have a lot of sap and resin inside, so they are more likely to pop as they heat up. So it's important to keep young children or pets away from any fires that you use these evergreen. It does make it pretty when it's doing that. It does, and it smells great, but it does make fires a slightly more of a hazard to those groups of people and pets. So that is important to keep your eye on if you are burning the tree. But those are just some of the few ways that you can use Christmas trees and holiday trees after the season is over.
No, I know there's different types of trees. Is there specific uses for them that work better for like spruces or pines or fir trees?
Not necessarily. They're all going to be pretty useful. The one thing that I did not mention that you could use pines for that you might not necessarily want to use spruces or firs for is mulching. So if you cut some of the pine branches off and basically place them around more sensitive plants in the garden, they will serve as more of an insulator for heat and water than firs and spruces. That keeps getting me. Just because you are more likely to be able to pack needles closer together from pines than you are from firs and spruces. Gosh dang it.
All right. Well, that was a lot of helpful information. I've known about that, putting them in the ponds and stuff, but like tying them to something for birds to start bringing in those birds for near your feeders and stuff.
Yep. You just want to make sure if you do that, that you don't make the binding too tight, because that can choke the live trees out still.
Oh, good idea. And is there like a time frame when it's time to just take down those trees from the binding?
I would say when the leaves start developing on the deciduous trees that they're tied to. And as you get closer to springtime, you probably want to start putting out less bird seed anyway to kind of get the birds back into the natural food cycle, as opposed to a supportive food cycle during the winter when food might be more scarce.
All right. Well, Jesse, very, very helpful advice this morning. And there's your warning. Time to get that tree down. It's a fire hazard if you keep leaving it in there.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
We'll be right back.
It's time for nominations for the 4 states final.
We take this time to honor this morning's four-state hero. Staff Sergeant Michael Van Nice from Humboldt, Kansas, served aboard the USS Epperson DE-719 with the 129th Transportation Company. Awarded numerous medals and service awards to Staff Sergeant Michael Van Nice. We thank you, this morning's four-state hero. 3 Kentucky families devastated by the deadly tornado outbreak in December receive a generous donation to help them get back on the road toward recovery. Isabel Hansen with their story.
This is what the Burgess' cars look like right now. They tell me it's a miracle to not only be alive today, but to now have a working car that belongs to them.
At first, I didn't think it was real.
That's what went through Rodney Burgess' mind when he first found out this car would belong to his wife.
It's overwhelming how nice people have been. Ever since the tornado, people have just been wonderful.
While they're feeling grateful today, they're still dealing with devastation.
Our house, our motorhome, our boats, cars, everything is completely gone. I mean, you can't even tell that it was there, really. Our whole neighborhood is gone.
To help Burgess and his neighbors, the Mayfield Community Foundation received enough donations to buy 10 cars to give away. That brings the foundation's vice president, Mel Dottie, to tears.
That's been the huge positive thing, is that people from all over the country and the world have poured in money.
He says their generosity will help make Mayfield better again.
It's a huge community of people who have given to make this possible.
There is no way we'll be able to thank everybody, but I hope they know that our gratitude is there, and we really, really appreciate it.
It means the world to us to at least have a way back and forth to work and stuff. You know, it's just unbelievable. Thank you.
In Mayfield, Live Local Now, Isabel Hansen, Heartland News.
Foundation is still taking donations to raise more money to give cars to more families. Another half hour of news and weather just ahead. Coming up on the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14, the daughter of a 4th victim of a serial killer speaks about her mother and what it's like for her to be remembered. And also a look at the Scream movie franchise as a new one hits movie theaters tomorrow. You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. We'll be right back.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Welcome back to the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. It's currently 7:32. Let's take a look at today's top stories. A Joplin organization is getting some much needed money for its mission of helping families in crisis. Chick-fil-A announced Watered Gardens Washington Family Hope Center will receive $125,000 as a recipient of a True Inspiration Award grant.
So we were excited to have a space available finally for moms to stay with their kids during those times of crisis. However, by the end of that first month, those 6 family units were full. And it's been mostly full except for a day or two here or there ever since.
Washington Family Hope Center says it will use the funds to provide food, shelter, clothing, job counseling, and more. At a council meeting Tuesday night, the city of Carthage recognized some local heroes who helped save the life of a Jasper County deputy. Chris Corbett suffered a heart attack in November. Last night, some co-workers at the Jasper County Sheriff's Office, emergency dispatchers, the Carthage Fire Department, and Mercy McCune Brooks EMTs were honored for recognizing and responding to Corbett's symptoms.
You can't, money doesn't pay to save a life, you know. You just need to turn around and do good deeds and, you know, try to pay it back somehow. Whether it's a little token of appreciation, like sending pizza to the, you know, firehouse or something like that. We just need to do something.
City also honored members of the Carthage Police Department for their help. A medical helicopter crashed Tuesday in Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania. The chopper was heading to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia with 3 adults and a baby on board when it went down in a heavily trafficked area. As Alicia Reed reports, it was fortunate there were no lives lost or property damaged.
A medical chopper crumpled like paper.
It was an insanely
miracle situation.
Neighbors heard the loud crash early this afternoon and came running to see what happened.
It's crazy to see how almost perfect of a landing it is. You know, no wires are hit, no buildings hit, and everybody's all right.
The James family was out running errands and say their car pulled up right next to Drexel Hill United Methodist Church when they saw the medical chopper descending.
See the tail of it kind of like swinging like this. And so then it's coming there. So I put my car in reverse, slammed on it on the gas, reversed backwards, and then it hit.
They escaped without injury, with a lot of debris on their windshield from the heavy wind and crash.
Then there was a lot of jet fuel coming out, and then we saw a little bit of fire inside of the actual thing, but not a lot of fire. It was just mostly smoke like billowing out of the actual helicopter.
They're holding each other just a little tighter tonight after believing they escaped death.
We feel very grateful right now. We're holding each other tighter. We're just thankful that at any moment life could be over, and yet, you know, God protected us.
Counting their luck, neighbors are also showing respect to the pilot.
It's amazing. I use the term miracle lightly, but it is almost like a miracle. You know, it's awesome to see that, and glad everybody's all right. And definitely the pilot, you know, and I know they're trained to be in those sort of situations, and it's great to see something like this, you know, where everybody comes out all right.
The pilot suffered the most serious injuries, and he is expected to survive. The National Transportation Safety Board will determine the cause of the crash. Well, journalists arriving early for the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing have been among the first to have their food served up to them remotely. While noodles are a fairly conventional dish in China, noodles from the ceiling are not. But that's the way lunch is dished up in the canteen in the main press center. The delivery system was proving a novelty on Tuesday, with even burgers being prepared electronically. The Winter Olympics will have stricter COVID protocols for visiting media, athletes, and officials than Tokyo, with everyone confined to a bubble which they cannot leave, and no interaction between those inside it and those outside. Only those who undergo a 3-week quarantine upon arrival can work outside the bubble, although they cannot come back into it. However, unlike Tokyo, domestic spectators will be allowed to attend events. Beijing 2022 gets underway February 4th.
Can we go ahead and make the obvious joke? Journalists and food, they don't care how it's served.
Just as long as it's there.
Yes! Sorry, folks, our profession has a bad reputation for being vulturistic, and the fact that if there's caloric intake, a journalist will find a way to poach it for him or herself.
Specifically sports journalist.
A little bit.
Because that's where you find the most food.
A little bit.
At the sporting events.
Uh-huh.
Well, you're there for a long time.
Shout out to Mrs. Harding in Carthage. I was actually thinking about her taco soup that she used to make for the Carthage Invitational Basketball Tournament. Yup.
That's cool.
Live look outside of Television City. Gorgeous, gorgeous beginning. We're just a couple minutes past official sunrise over Joplin. Speaking of, 42 degrees is where we stand now. Look out to the west. We're as low as 25 right now in Neodesha. Compare that to the 42 in Joplin, the 41 in Carthage. So we have been widespread as far as our temperatures go. Wind tracker with the strongest of the winds now disappearing off to the east. Won't be as blustery as what it was yesterday. A 7-day forecast that'll lift us into the mid-50s on both Wednesday and Thursday, about 10 to 12 degrees above normal. Remember, Friday night not only brings us rain, but also going to see some snow to the north early Saturday morning with a cold front that'll keep us in the 30s on Saturday and Sunday. We'll be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this.
Do you bet?
This morning on the KOAM News Now Facebook page in our morning Insta poll discussing weight loss. Now, if you're a fan of the game show Jeopardy, you may recognize Joshua Swiger. He was also known as the Aloha Shirt Guy, but that right there, you may not recognize him. That's because the married father, he weighed more than 400 pounds when he was on the game show. Then the pandemic hit. And before COVID, he owned a small tour company that went under when tourism dried up. So while he searched for jobs, took a good look at himself, and that sent him on a weight loss journey. Started by watching his diet, exercising daily with his kids. He now weighs in at just under 200 pounds. That's right, from 400 to 200. He's become a personal trainer and fitness instructor. Our question for you this morning is, are you happy with your weight? Right now, 32% of you would like to lose a lot of weight. 42% would say lose just a little. So that's 74% of our combined vote right there in that category, with 13% saying you're good and another 13 saying, I'd like to put a couple pounds on. Of course, you can connect to us each and every morning through our Facebook page or directly to the poll, KOAMnewsnow.com/vote. A 48-year-old Virginia woman has been confirmed as the fourth victim of what's being called the shopping cart serial killer. Stephanie Harrison's body was one of two found in a container near a hotel in Fairfax County. Daisy Caballero shows us how Harrison's daughter is letting others know how she wants her mom to be remembered.
It's probably the worst case scenario, probably the worst time of my entire life.
Destiny Livingston received the gut-wrenching phone call on Friday, January 7th, confirming the murder of her mother.
I knew that when she didn't call me that there was something wrong.
48-year-old Stephanie Harrison has been missing since August of this year, which is something Livingston says her mother would never do willingly.
My mom called me every day, 10 times a day. My brother 10 times a day.
Livingston had not seen her mother in 2 years because she lives in Canada and the pandemic had limited the ability to travel, but says she will cherish their last moments together forever.
My last interaction was putting her in a red car and giving her a hug, telling her I'd see her when COVID was over. That's never gonna happen.
Harrison is leaving behind 3 children and 7 grandchildren, and even though her mother's life was tragically cut short, Livingston is hoping people will remember the way she lived, not how she died.
So my mom was super family orientated. She was a beautiful, kind soul. She put everyone before herself. She would drop anything she was doing if you called and needed her help. She would give you her last dime if you needed it.
And in loving memory of her mother, Livingston has decided to get married on her mother's birthday, November 9th.
Be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this. During a hearing before the Senate Banking Committee Tuesday, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says he expects a series of interest rate hikes this year as inflation threatens economic recovery. Madeline Rivera is in D.C. with more on Powell's remarks as the country tackles rising prices and a tough labor market.
Today, the economy is expanding at its fastest pace in many years.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell is forecasting changes to monetary policy, saying the country no longer needs the economic support it received when the pandemic hit 2 years ago. Inflation now top of mind for Powell, lasting longer than what some economists had expected.
If things develop as expected, we'll be normalizing policy, meaning we're going to end our asset purchases in March, meaning we'll be raising rates over the course of the year.
Workers have seen their wages go up, but higher prices for items like food and gas, which Powell has blamed in part to supply chain disruptions, are eating into those gains. Powell warns inflation can threaten the job market too, reflected in slow hiring in November and December.
We can see that participation is moving only very slowly. And to get a long expansion, we're going to need price stability.
The Omicron variant is also disrupting the labor market. Businesses and hospitals nationwide are now struggling with staffing shortages, with more people getting sick. To make sure hospitals have enough staff, California, for instance, is now issuing new guidelines, eliminating quarantine for asymptomatic healthcare workers with COVID-19.
We're here to work. However, I think it's unethical to put vulnerable patients' life on the line to gamble that we don't pass the pathogen to them.
Ahead of a key inflation report to be released on Wednesday, some economists and the White House are predicting that prices once again climbed higher in December. In Washington, Madeline Rivera, Fox News.
Regulators now allowed to go forward against one of the largest tech companies in the world. A federal judge ruling earlier this week that the FTC can proceed with a lawsuit against Meta. That's the parent company of Facebook. This reverses a decision made back in June of 2021, dismissing the original suit. Judge for the District of Columbia saying the government's original complaint had, quote, stumbled out of the starting blocks. But newly presented facts allow the suit to go forward. FTC saying Meta holds an unlawful monopoly over personal social media thanks to their ownership of services like Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram. We'll be right back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14, but first, a look at our stock prices before the opening bell.
time brings.
Latest release of the Scream movie series creeps into theaters this week. Our man Rick Damigella looks at the history of the slasher flick franchise.
There's certain rules to surviving. The killer is a part of something in the past.
It's been over a decade since Ghostface frightened moviegoers in Scream 4, but the series dates back to 1996 with the original Scream.
Hello?
Hello. Scream was something spectacular. It's impossible to forget those first few minutes when you see Drew Barrymore in probably a career best performance. It was a very smart film. The way it kind of went after the tropes of horror.
Hello?
Hello, Sydney. Scream 2 followed a year later.
The sequel was, I think, frankly, ahead of its time because it took the tropes of the sequel and did it in such a marvelous way.
What do you know about trilogies?
Scream 3 arrived in 2000.
Scream 3 is a good movie. And look, Carrie Fisher in a horror film, that's amazing.
There's a killer out there patterning his murders after the original movie.
It would be 11 years before Scream 4.
Scream 4 is an interesting one because I'll be honest, with my first viewing, I wasn't a huge fan. The kills are pretty brutal. They ain't playing in this film. And I feel like it's a film that holds up better with repeated viewings.
Something about this one just feels different.
Bringing us to this year's 5th movie, simply titled Scream.
Judging from the reaction in the Twitterverse, this movie is going to stand up to at least the first two.
I've seen this movie before.
Not this movie. Watching with the lights on in Hollywood, I'm Rick Damigella.
All right, let's take a live look over 7th and Rangeline at our current conditions where we sit at 42 degrees. It's been a nice start as far as what we see in the central portion of the 4 states, but as you push out to the west and southeast Kansas, Neodesha, still hanging around 24 degrees. Compare that to the 30s, if not 40s, that we get through southwest Missouri, and then we've got 34 in Miami and 34 as well in Nevada. Still a little bit of a wind chill. Everybody feeling like mid to high 20s right now. We've yet to see a 30 on the board, but still, we're still 9 degrees warmer than what we were at this point in time on Tuesday. And yesterday we topped out at 57 degrees, a great afternoon. We'll be right on par with that again, and won't have to fight as much wind as what we had yesterday. Skywatch Storm Tracker with the waterlogged Pacific Northwest is where the majority of the action will stay today. We're seeing just a little bit of cloud cover, but a dry Midwest. And with early sunshine and even some late increasing clouds, still around 56, 57 degrees. Stay dry on Future Track for today and on Thursday. That tune will change on Friday. Watch the top of your screen in this system that juts in from the Canadian border. Whole lot of heavy snow for the upper plains, and then as it gets around Kansas City, well, KC is going to get some snow as well. We see it begin to flip back on over to rain. Now, I think early Saturday morning we are going to see some snowflakes, but with our temperatures being so far above normal here lately, probably not going to see a whole lot of it able to stick to our warm ground. We'll be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this.
Welcome back to the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. Here's what's happening today. The Omicron-fueled COVID-19 surge continues to spread out of control in the U.S. Over 5 million new cases were reported in the past 7 days. It's the country's highest weekly total since the pandemic began. And the acting head of the FDA says it now appears likely that most people will eventually be infected. President Biden is calling on the Senate to change the filibuster to pass voting rights legislation. The president said the rule requiring 60 votes to advance a bill is being used to obstruct the will of the majority. And investigators are trying to determine what caused a medical helicopter to crash outside Philadelphia yesterday. The aircraft was carrying a 2-month-old baby to a hospital when it went down in Drexel Hill just before 1 p.m. Everyone on board survived and is expected to recover. Let's check in with Michael with a final look at your forecast.
We'll eventually get up into those mid-50s. Got to remember, we're so widespread right now. We're anywhere from about 25 to 45 degrees as far as what we see out to the west compared to the central portion of the 4 states. But it's still a way above average for today and tomorrow. Remember, Friday night is when the rain begins to kick in. See a little bit of that flip over to snow for Saturday morning and a cold front just in time for the weekend with 30s on Saturday and Sunday.
All right, well, Tokyo's Zoological Gardens held the first public viewing on Wednesday of twin giant pandas, cubs Lele and Gio, who were born in June of last year. Over 500 lucky winners of a lottery walked into the panda enclosure in the morning to get their first look at Japan's popular twin pandas. Their mother, Shin, arrived in Japan from China about a decade ago. They're the first twin pandas born in the capital's zoo. The panda public viewing event will span over 3 days, while the zoo itself has been temporarily closed since January 11th due to the resurgence of new coronavirus cases in Tokyo. Now, only the limited number of lottery winners will have 1 minute each to view the mammals. It's not clear when the cubs will be on display for the public in the future.
You get 60 seconds, huh? Wonder if you're allowed to take pictures.
Yeah, and hopefully they were out of there, like actually doing something. I don't know.
Yeah, can you imagine you go in there, they're sleeping for that 60 seconds? Yeah.
I'm going to turn around for 60 seconds.
Thanks for letting us put the good in your morning. We'll be back with more news and weather when we see you at noon.
Have a great morning and an even better day.
Shop huge savings this